Hey, welcome guys to the next video in the series at which we will take a look at the Fast Effect timing chart, one of the most interesting, most complex, but most helpful things in the Yu-Gi-Oh game that the game doesn't really tell you about because it basically does this for you. But at the same time, there's also a lot of opportunity that you are missing by not understanding this and not playing the game at its fullest power, because the game will deny you some opportunities to activate your fast effects meaning your spell speed 2 or higher cards, because the game wants to make it easy for you. And by you understanding this, you can basically work the rules to the fullest and can play the game to the fullest, using every opportunity to get an advantage over your opponent and thereby becoming a better player. If you really want to become a good player, you should be accustomed with this chart here. Really important, looks a bit difficult at the beginning, but it's quite simple if you get to understand it, which is what I will do with you in this video. If you do not know what spell speeds are, then check out the first video in the series on the right thing here at the top of the video, and there you can start the series, and every video will basically building on each other. So start with the first one, go to the second one, and then come here to the Fast Effect timing chart. So let's just hop right in. We have the situation A, which is the game state is open. Game state is open means that you, as the turn player, the player whose turn it is, you can activate any kind of effect. So you can also activate a spell speed 1 effect, meaning you can do a normal summon. You can also play a normal spell card. You can go to your extra deck and link summon. You can go to your extra deck and XYZ summon. And obviously these are all of them are things that you cannot do when we are building a chain. So for example, if I'm building a chain, I have activated my Maxi, you activated your Ash Blossom, then I cannot go to my extra deck and XYZ summon because the game state is not open. And if the game state is not open, I cannot do these simple spell speed 1 things. I can only do them when the game state is open, and there are multiple ways in which the game state can become closed. Then it will be resolved and we will return to an open game state. And we will look at this in more depth. I will also explain to you what this means in game, because it's super important to understand. So there are basically 3 things that can happen from an open game state. Let's look at the first one. The turn player, which let's say I am at the turn, so it's my turn, I'm the turn player, I can pass the step or the phase. So I'm in draw phase, right? And then I want to go to standby phase. The turn player, or as the turn player, I would need to declare I want to go to standby phase. And then you, as the opponent, let's follow the arrow here, you could then activate a fast effect. The funny thing is that the game doesn't give you the opportunity to do so. As you can see, we have this here, this little toggle button on auto right now. And we will come to this in a moment because that's also important. But a classic example, you can see right now Maxis in my hand. A classic example is if you have this on auto, then you will not be able to, in draw phase or in standby phase, which we are in now, activate your Maxi. Because the game, if you have this on auto, basically asks itself the question, where could he want to activate a fast effect? And it basically only gives you the windows that are most common, so you don't always have to click no here. The reason, by the way, why I can now activate my Maxi is that I had this on before. So I had this on and then we went to this window, right? So don't get confused here. So if you have this on, the game will basically give you every opportunity or every window that you can activate a fast effect, and we will talk about all the windows because they are all in the fast effect timing chart here. So with this on, and we will go over this in a minute, here in game, you will be able to activate a fast effect at any window that there is. But with this thing on auto, the game will only give you the most common windows, but you will then miss some opportunities to activate cards. So for example, if you always would have this on auto, you would then never be able to activate a Maxi in your opponent's draw or standby phase. You would always need to wait until your opponent has, from the open game state, performed an action. So for example, a normal summon or the activation of a spell card, and then you could play your Maxi, which obviously plays into cards like Triple Tactics Talents, which are able to be activated when your opponent activates an effect in main phase. This is something you can play around by activating this, putting this on and throwing your Maxi in the draw or standby phase. If you're wondering how can I do this, then you would need to go here and put this activation confirmation thing on switch. Switch would allow you to then switch between these options, and obviously you do not always want to put this on because then the game would basically ask you after every step, do you want to activate, do you want to activate, do you want to activate? This is why the game doesn't do it, because the players would be annoyed and nobody would be playing the game. But you need to know this and you need to use it if you really want to become good at the game, because you will miss activation windows that are very important. And then if you put this on off, then you basically won't get any activation windows at all, so you would never be able to activate your Max C then, even if you could, right? So on auto is the most common thing, and you most of the time want to have this on auto. But as I got better, as I got a better player, I was having this on way more often, or I have a better feeling when I have to put this on, so to have every opportunity that the game gives me or can give me due to the rulings. So let's hop over in the fast effect timing chart again, and as I said, I will talk about this in the game in a moment. So the turn player passes, the opponent has the ability to activate a fast effect, and then if he does, we are obviously in the chain rules. This is a block D here, we are building the chain, then we are resolving the chain. This is basic, right? We have talked about this, how a chain is built, how a chain is resolved. We have talked about the spell speed and what you can chain to what. If you, as I said, don't know, check out the first and second video of the series. And then we will come to this in a moment, to the B and C box here, because these are very important in-game. If both players agree to switch basically the phase, then we would go to the next phase. Let's say we were in draw phase and both players agree to go to standby phase, then now we are in standby phase and the game state is once again open. Obviously in the standby phase you cannot normal summon a monster, so we would need to continue to main phase. We are saying, okay, we want to end the standby phase. Our opponent says, okay, let's do that, and we are going to main phase. So basically we always have to agree on doing this, but the game never does it this way if we don't put this thing on auto here. Keep that in mind. So this is phase switching, or like step switching, you could also say. Then the second situation is that the turn player activates a card or effect that starts a chain, because not everything starts a chain. And this is the next thing. For some things that your opponent does, if you do not have this thing on, the game will not give you the opportunity to activate a fast effect, right? For some things it will, for some things it won't. So for example, if your opponent sets a card, a spell or a trap card, that after the setting of the spell or the trap card, you would be able to activate a fast effect. But if you have this on auto, the game will not give you this window, so you won't be able to activate this after your opponent sets a spell or trap. Of course, there are not like that many situations in which you really need to activate a fast effect after this, but you could, for example, you could use that. One example would be if your opponent has, I don't know, a Lady Labyrinth, which is protected by a set spell and trap, and you have a spell and trap destruction, then you might want to destroy this spell and trap and then play another card to destroy the lady. Because if you do not have this on, then your opponent would just set, I don't know, 4 set cards here, and then only afterwards you would be able to activate something. But by that point it would obviously be too late, because you can only destroy 1 card and then the lady is still protected. Just one example, I hope you could follow me here, but it's not that important. We will go over this in a moment in more detail. So for example, setting a spell or trap, if you have this on auto, you will not get the opportunity to activate a fast effect, because this does not start a chain, right? But we are at the point turn player activates a card or card effect that starts a chain. For example, activating a spell trap or a trap, activating a spell or a trap effect, which means they are already on field. For example, a field spell that I can click and I activate it, or I activate a monster effect. It doesn't really matter if it's a trigger effect, a non-summon effect, an ignition effect, and we talked about these as well. Check out the other videos of any spell speed, right? So this could also be spell speed 1. So if I spell speed 1 my normal summon, and then it has a, if this card is normal summon clause in it, then it would activate and it would start a chain, because then I'm able to chain something. Then we go to chain rules. Once again, we have talked about chain rules, nothing more to say here. And then after the chain resolves, we would go to a different box which says, does this activate a triggered effect? But more to that in a moment. And the third thing we have here is that the turn player takes an action that does not start a chain. So for example, normal summon, set of a monster, set a card. So that's what I talked about. For example, set of a monster, which means a monster is set face down, right? In the rulebook, you would be able to activate a fast effect then, is indicated by the point C here, which we will talk about in a moment, but having this on auto will not give you the opportunity. Special summon that does not start a chain, which would be a link summon on XYZ summon, which doesn't have a, when this card is summoned effect, declare an attack, change battle position. But after all of these things here, even if they doesn't start a chain, you are still able to activate a fast effect if you want, but this will only be available to you if you have this on. Otherwise, you will miss some of these windows. So always keep that in mind. And then this comes to the next box. Also, the chain rules comes to the next box. Does this activate a triggered effect? And we will talk about this specific scenario a little bit later on. I will show you in game what this means. So just to explain in a moment before I show you, does this activate a triggered effect? So let's say, for example, in this chain, when we resolve this chain, something was destroyed on field, and we also have a card on field that says, when something is destroyed on field, then draw a card. So this would then be an activated trigger effect. So the chain here, the resolving of the chain, has activated a trigger effect that wants to draw a card. This is why we are in this box here. If we have to say yes to this, if there was a trigger effect activated, then we once again would go to chain rules, because then you could once again, or your opponent, if it was my trigger, could once again chain something, and then we would build another chain, which then would resolve, and we once again would ask the question, does this activate a triggered effect? But as I said, I will explain you this in a moment with a simple example. If this does not activate a triggered effect, then the turn player can activate a fast effect. And if he doesn't want to activate a fast effect, then the opponent can activate a fast effect. And every time that some of them activates a fast effect, then of course, once again, we are going to chain rules. Because if, for example, you normal summon a monster and I go, what could I do? I could activate Skill Drain, for example. Then you could obviously, because I activated a trap card, turn player activates a card or effect that starts a chain, could then go chain something to it. So after everything that happens, the turn player can activate a fast effect, but you as the opponent can also activate a fast effect. This is called on effect resolution. And this is the thing that, or effect resolution window. This is the thing that really confused me when I was playing the paper TCG, because everyone was talking about on effect resolution. And I was like, what is on effect resolution? Because the game often doesn't give you this on effect resolution window, which I will show you in the game right now. And then if, let's say, I don't want to activate a fast effect and the opponent doesn't want to activate a fast effect, then we go back to the open game state, okay? We will come back to this in a moment, but let's just check a few of these things out here. So, as I already said, we are here because I had this on auto before. That's why I can now, in the standby phase, activate my Max C, because on, this basically shows me every opportunity. So what I want to show you here is this situation. We have this field, right? We have an X Purely Noir, which has the Sleepy Memory attached to this. And Sleepy Memory says, a Purely XYZ monster that has this card as material gains the following effect. Once per turn during your opponent's standby phase, which we are in right now, you can draw one card. So what I want to explain to you first is how this fast effect or on effect resolution thing works. So we will put this on now. What you have to understand is this question here, activate, resolve a card or effect. This tells us, and also the ability to be able to click on Sleepy Memory tells us that we are now in the standby phase, because I can only activate this in the standby phase. Let's activate this effect and see what happens afterwards. So what this is here, we activated this effect, and what we have now here is the game asks us if we want to activate Max C. So what we did here is we activated an effect, and now there is this chain starting process. So the game asks me, do I want to chain something else? If my opponent had the opportunity to also chain something here, he would also have the opportunity to chain to my X Purely Noir. He always has the priority in doing the next chain. So if I do this chain link one, I'm the player that does this, then my opponent has the opportunity to build the next chain link. And then I would have the opportunity to build the next chain link, and so on. So this asks me now, do we want to put something on this chain? Let's say I want to say no. Then we are drawing this card. You drew cards or activated, activate a card or effect. So what this window, because this is an activation window, right? We can now activate Max C. But the question is, why can we activate Max C? And on the fast effect timing chart, we are now the turn player. yeah, we are now here. Opponent can activate a fast effect. So we have started a chain. I have started a chain with the X Pour Noir drawing a card, and then this did not activate a trigger effect. Our opponent did not want to activate an effect. As we could see, there was, I think he has nothing in the hand, he's just a computer, but obviously he could activate something now as well if he wanted to, if he had this toggle thing on. So our opponent didn't want to activate a fast effect, and now we are here in the column C. Opponent, which at the moment I am the opponent because he is the turn player, it's his turn. Now I can activate a fast effect. This is what this question is: on effect resolution. Do I want on effect resolution of X Pour Noir's effect? Do I want to activate something? This is the window here. And if you would have this on auto, this window you wouldn't get. Obviously it doesn't make a difference in this particular situation if I activate Maxi now or not, but just to understand. Every time an effect resolves, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's a spell, a trap, or a monster effect. If you have this on, the game will ask you, if you have a fast effect that you can activate, will ask you, do you want to activate something on effect resolution? That's really important to understand. Let's say we don't. So it's the standby phase. Activate a card or effect. So I hope you can remember that we began this whole process in the standby phase, because the last time we were here, in the standby phase, we were able to activate Purely Sleepy Memory. Then we drew a card, and then we came to the effect resolution window. And he asked us, the game asked us, do we want to activate something on effect resolution? We said no. Now we are back again in the standby phase. It is the standby phase. And now the game asks us, because we can, do we want to activate a card or effect? Let's say we don't. We go to main phase now. And now obviously our opponent, because its main phase has the main phase priority, he plays a card, and now your opponent succeed in normal summoning a monster, activate a card or effect. This is a window you would also get if you had this on auto, so the game does give you this window here. But just to understand that there are different windows at different times. There are the windows from the steps, but then there are also windows like indicated by the fast effect timing chart that are on effect resolution windows. So the effect resolved, our opponent didn't want to activate something, so the game asked us, hey, do we want to activate your Maxi on effect resolution of the X Pour Noir? Just to make it more clear, we will hop into a different scenario where I will show you all the possible steps in which you can activate a fast effect. Hey guys, just a quick one. If you want to support the channel, then please consider subscribing, as at the moment only 13% of the people who are regularly watching the channel are subscribed, while 87% are not. If you want to help me out, I would be very grateful. And now let's continue with the video. So in this scenario, I've just set a Purely Pretty Memory. This is a quick play spell, which is spell speed 2. We will be able to activate this in our opponent's turn. So I set this, and now I will just pass over. And the first thing you notice here, it is the end phase. Do we want to activate something? So the game, because we have this on, not sure if we would also get this on auto. I think we would, but the game asks us, end phase, do you want to do something? No, we won't. Then we are going over. He draws a card, and the first thing we are asked is, your opponent drew cards. Do you want to activate effect? So this is basically start of draw phase. And now it is the draw phase. And we once again, as you can see, like there are only 2 seconds that have been gone by, but we had 2 opportunities to activate the effect, because now the game shows us every activation window that there is in the game. So the first one was at the start of the draw phase. Now the next one is, it's the draw phase. If we go cancel now, then we will continue to the standby phase. Always keep in mind that it's not our turn, so if this was a real player, then obviously he would probably also be able to activate fast effects. Thereby you would have this little, you can see this is now a blue light here, then there would be the red light indicating that our opponent now has the ability to activate a fast effect. Let's say no to this. Now it is the standby phase. Activate a card or effect. So once again, we could activate a card or effect at the end of the standby phase. Let's say we don't. We just pass over. We're going to main phase. He goes and he activates this card. Important thing to note here, spell cards, like continuous spell cards, always need to be activated. This is not the effect of the spell card. This is only the activation. Obviously, this spell card does not have an effect that will be like triggered because it's a continuous spell, but there are obviously also continuous spells that you can click on, which for example say draw a card, but you would have to first activate the card and then you would have to activate the effect of the card. So what this is now is the game asks us, do we want to basically chain this to the activation of this continuous trap? We are saying no. And now this once again is the effect resolution window. So once again, we are now here. So we are started with the turn player activates a card or card effect that starts a chain because he activated a spell card. Then we said no to the chain rules because we didn't want to chain. So we went to, does this activate a triggered effect? Which it didn't. We will talk about this in a moment. Then he did not want to activate a fast effect, indicated by the fact that he had nothing in his hand that was glaring red because he's just the bot opponent. And now we then had the opportunity, sorry, not that way, but he didn't want to activate a fast effect. And now we can, because this has resolved, the activation of this has resolved, also indicated by the chain symbol no longer being on this card. Now we can, on effect resolution, once again, this is the effect resolution window here, point C, we could activate this on effect resolution. We won't. So next thing, your opponent succeeded in normal summoning a monster. Do we want to activate a card? So normal summoning monster, once again, we can activate a card because turn player takes an action that does not start a chain, normal summon a monster. This does not activate a trigger effect. He didn't want to activate a fast effect. And now the game asks us, do we want to activate a fast effect until we then go back again into the open game state? So note here, all of this was going back to open game state, right? So when he played this card was activated. We could then chain. We didn't chain. Then he had the opportunity for a fast effect. He didn't have a fast effect. We had the opportunity to, on effect resolution, activate here again. We didn't want to, so we went back to an open game state. So now he could, in main phase 1, do a normal summon. And if I now remember, once again, we are on effect resolution here. We are at the point C right now. If I now click cancel, we will then go back to the open game state and he will now again be able to play cards. Okay, so we were in the open game state. He decided to activate this trigger effect. Once per turn, you can send one Elemental Saber monster from your hand to the graveyard, send one Elemental Saber, blah, blah, blah. This is not a trigger effect, an ignition effect, meaning that he would have to basically click on, yes, I want to activate this, and then pay the cost, which he did. Once again, we are at the start of the chain, also indicated by the little chains that are running over the picture here. So we are now in chain rules. The game asks us, do we want to chain this? No, we don't. He resolves his effect, and now you see there are no longer these chains, so this is not a chain, this is on effect resolution once again. So once again, here in the box C. Do we want to activate something on effect resolution of this effect? No. Once again, we can look at this once again. He plays a normal spell card, which starts a chain, right? Indicated by the chain symbol here. Do we want to chain? No. The effect resolves, and once again, a card was added to your opponent's hand. Do we want to activate this effect? Because we could. On effect resolution, the effect has just resolved. Once again, this is point C. It's before the end of the main phase, activate a card or effect. This is also something I think that you don't get every time in every situation, so it can be quite useful to have this. But of course, it's before the end of the main phase. Do we want to activate something? Once again, we are here. The turn player wants to pass, and now we, here in box E, have the opportunity to activate a card once again. We don't. Battle phase. It is the battle phase. Activate a card or effect. We are in the battle phase now. I can, of course, once again, use a quick effect, but I don't want to. Direct attack. Once again, we have the opportunity to activate an effect on attack declaration. We don't want to. It is the battle step. This is damage step calculation. And the damage goes through. And now it is before the end of the battle step. This is the point at which you would normally activate your evenly matched end of battle phase. But yeah, once again, he asks us, because once again, we as the not turn player, keep that in mind, can activate a fast effect. And I think you already understand how little of these windows you are getting when you have this on auto, because a lot of them you are basically never see. It's the end of the battle phase. Once again, a window to activate, because the thing before was end of damage step, and now it's the end of the battle phase. Now we are swapping the phase, and now it's before the end of the main phase, indicating that our opponent has just clicked on going to end phase, and now we have once again an opportunity to activate our card. End phase. If your opponent is about to end his turn, so he basically doesn't want to do anything in end phase here, so now we can do something in end phase, right? We don't want to. And once again, it becomes our turn, in which we can now draw, and we are the turn player now, and we can obviously now do the same thing once again. We don't want to activate something, it's the draw phase, standby phase. Do we want to activate something in standby phase? No, we don't. Main phase, and now we are in this open game state. So open game state indicated by the fact that we can, for example, activate our spell speed 1, Pot of Desires. We are in an open game state now, okay? And just to show you, I think this is clear to you, but I just want to show you this. This indicating once again that we are here in a chain. I activate this, and you can see I can now only chain stuff that is spell speed 2 or higher. As you can see, my Pot of Desires, I can't do anything with it. I also cannot use my Impermanence to set it on the field, and I can only use my Ash to be activated, but not to do a normal summon. This I can only do once this chain is resolved. Let's resolve this chain. And once again here, this is the effect resolution window. So just to be clear, this is point C again, or in this case, it's point B because we are the turn player now. Keep in mind that what I showed you before was the turn of our opponent, so we were always this here, the C aspect. Now we are the B aspect. So let's say no. And once again, we are in open game state, and I can once again use my Pot of Desires. So the last thing I want to show you when it comes to the fast effect timing chart is this triggered effect thingy. So it's also this something happens in a new chain. This is what this is indicating. And that something happens in a new chain after this chain resolves. So a chain resolves, and this directly starts a new chain. I will show you this. This is pretty simple, but let's hop over into a scenario. Okay, so a pretty simple scenario. Labyrinth is always awesome at explaining these things because they have a lot of this. They are a very complicated deck when it comes to resolving chains and to chain rulings. So in this scenario, I have just put the big Welcome Labyrinth here on the field via the Stovey, and I have discarded a Welcome Labyrinth. For all of you who are not familiar with these cards, let's just quickly explain what the idea behind this is. So we can, with the big Welcome Labyrinth, special one Labyrinth monster from our hand, deck, or graveyard, and then we have to return monster. We can return one monster we control to the hand. Okay, so we are summoning a monster, and then we have to return a monster. And the cards that are here in the graveyard, that I have set up in the graveyard, have these bonus effects here on the card, because this is the only important thing right now. If a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, while this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, this turn, you can set this card, okay? And if a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, this also means if a monster leaves the field because I have bounced it back with this effect of big Welcome Labyrinth. So this here will trigger this in the graveyard, okay? Same thing with the Stovey, it says the same thing. If a monster leaves the field by your normal trap effects, while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card. Okay, just for fun, let's summon this Ash. Doesn't really have to be the case, but now I will show you how this activated trigger effect thing works. So we are in draw phase now. Because I've put this on, I get the draw phase activation. Same thing here, by the way. If you want to play Labyrinth and you want to play in draw phase, you have to put this on. So okay, let's start here. We are activating big Welcome Labyrinth. And now we can see we are once again here in the chains. Yeah, we are once again in this part here. We have chain rules going on. Okay, we are building a chain, we are resolving a chain. Just for fun, let's just add our Maxi in here. It doesn't really matter. And now the game will just resolve because nothing more can be added, right? Maxi, now big Welcome. We are still at resolving this card, right? We'll summon the Lovely here, which also will have a trigger effect, and then we will bounce this here. And now you can see I have 3 effects that I can activate, and all of these are triggered effects. So the resolution of this chain has triggered all of these 3 cards, okay? So this is what we are doing right now. And if you're not familiar with what we are doing now, building an own chain, then you have to check out the second video in which I talked about the Zegok separate effects going on chain, in which now we have 3 effects that activate at the same time, and now we have to build the chain ourselves. And important thing, our opponent cannot chain anything here because we are building a chain right now. as I already said, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go check out the second video, I explain it there. So we have talked about these two here. These were activated because a card left the field by a trap card. This also has this clause here. I think it's super nice that the game highlights this now. If another monster leaves the field by your normal trap effect, you can destroy one card in your opponent's hand at random or their field. So we have 3 effects that were just triggered by the resolving of this chain Big Welcome Labyrinth. So the resolving of Big Welcome Labyrinth activated these 3 trigger effects, and now we are in this here, in this column, right? So let's just chain this. We are going chain link 1, it doesn't really matter. Let's go chain link 2, chain link 3. And as you can see, once again, we are building a chain. This is also indicated by this here. Does this activate a triggered effect? Yes, we are once again in chain rules. This is what happens right now. We are resolving the chain right now. Sniping a card from the hand, and once again we are in the on effect resolution window. So the game asks us here in B, we have resolved the chain. Then once again, have we activated a trigger effect by resolving this chain here? No, we have not, because not any of these 3 cards have a trigger effect now, because we have already basically the triggered effect of these cards were already like resolved now, and there is no further trigger effect that was triggered by the resolving of the chain we just resolved. So the Stovitobi, the lovely, and the setting of the welcome. And now we are once again at the B point on effect resolution, the turn player, which we are at the moment. Or are we? No, we are not. So we are not at the B point, sorry guys, but we are at the C point. We are the opponent, of course, because it's his turn. He didn't want to activate a fast effect. So once again, we can now, on effect resolution, the game asks us, do we want to activate Stovitobi's effect? Which we could do. Now, once again, we have to pay the cost first. Once again, we are and select the target. But if we're in this case, we couldn't chain anything more because there was nothing to chain. But if we had another card to chain, we obviously could have chained again, thereby starting the whole process over again. Our opponent crashes here, but it doesn't really matter. Let's just hop right back to the fast effect timing chart. I think this explains everything. I know it's a bit much. Maybe you have to watch this video over again. This is definitely one of the more complicated aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! Also the then and if then stuff, which we will cover in a different video. But yeah, this is basically how chains and chain resolving and chain ruling works, and how phases work, and especially understanding when you can activate effects. So just go into your game and play around with this a bit. Just put this on and try to understand. So you can just go and Google fast effect timing chart. Just put this on your second screen if you have one, and then just go into the game and just go on here, put this on, and go through the different stages and try to understand at which point at the fast effect timing chart you are at this moment. And I will guarantee you this is one of the best things you can learn to understand the game at a way more deeper level. This is really so important. I think this is the one thing that you have to understand. So this is, okay, let me put it in a different way. This is the biggest thing that you can learn to understand the game in more depth. Yeah, this is it for the fast effect timing chart. I hope I have explained everything. Let me know in the comments if there was something missing or maybe something wrong. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please consider subscribing, hitting the thumbs up, and also the notification bell. This helps me out a lot, and we will see each other in the next lesson.